All right, let's dive into a really juicy legal battle today, straight from the world of fast food. It's a story about two burgers that seem almost identical, and a lawsuit that took a turn nobody saw coming.
So let's just get right to it. On one side, you have the icon, the legend, the Big Mac. And on the other, from the Australian chain Hungry Jack's, you have the Big Jack. I mean, you look at those two names side by side. You'd think this would be a pretty quick fight, right?
And you know what? That's exactly what McDonald's thought too. They saw this and immediately filed a lawsuit. But this case is so much more complicated than just two similar names. There's a twist here that really caught everyone by surprise.
Now, this rivalry between McDonald's and Hungry Jack's has been going on for decades, but in 2020, it totally boiled over. McDonald's dragged its competitor to court, kicking off a legal war that would drag on for years.
So, the lawsuit is official. McDonald's is on the attack. Their goal? Get the Big Jack wiped off the menu, gone for good, arguing it was just a shameless rip-off of their most famous burger.
The first, and let's be honest, the most obvious part of this whole fight was all about the name. The core of McDonald's argument was that the name Big Jack was a deliberate and illegal copy of their Big Mac trademark.
Let's look at the actual legal claim here. McDonald's said the name was substantially identical or deceptively similar. What that really means is they were arguing that Hungry Jack's chose the name Big Jack specifically to trick customers into thinking it was a McDonald's product. So the whole thing hinged on this idea of customer confusion. For McDonald's to win, they had to prove that an average person would actually be confused by the name Big Jack. The court wasn't just deciding if the names sounded alike, but if that similarity would actually mislead somebody. So, with the names looking so incredibly similar, pretty much everyone, legal experts, fast food fans, we all expected a pretty easy win for McDonald's on this one. But that is not what happened. And boom, in a pretty stunning decision, the court actually ruled in favor of Hungry Jack's. The judge basically said that Australian consumers are savvy enough to know the difference between the two huge fast food chains. Because the brands themselves are so famous and distinct, the similar-sounding burger names just weren't enough to cause any real confusion. A huge, huge win for the underdog. But wait, the story doesn't stop there. Not even close. Winning the battle over the name was great, but it was only one half of the fight. There was a whole other accusation buried in this lawsuit. It turns out this case had a second act. McDonald's wasn't just suing over the name, they were also going after the commercials for the Big Jack, zeroing in on a very specific claim Hungry Jack's was making about what was in their burger. And this is where it gets really interesting. See, Hungry Jack's had been advertising everywhere that its Big Jack burger had 25% more Australian beef than the Big Mac. Well, McDonald's lawyers decided to call them on it, accusing them of misleading conduct. So what's misleading conduct? It's all about being honest in your ads. You simply cannot make false or deceptive claims about your product. So now the court had a totally different question to answer. Was Hungry Jack's actually telling the truth about the beef? So, after 3 long years of legal back and forth, the court was finally ready to give its full verdict. And it was a split decision that gave both sides something to think about. And here's how it all shook out. On the first claim, trademark infringement, Hungry Jack's won. The court said the name Big Jack was perfectly fine. But on that second claim, the one about misleading conduct, Hungry Jack's lost. The court found that their advertising about the beef content was, in fact, misleading.
And just to put this all into perspective, this whole process, from the day the lawsuit was filed to that final verdict, took about 3 years. A long and probably very expensive fight over a name and an ad campaign.
So why does a burger battle in Australia really matter to the rest of us? Well, because it teaches us some incredibly important lessons about branding, about advertising, and about what you can, and maybe more importantly, what you can't get away with in business today. So here are the big takeaways. First, having a similar name isn't automatically illegal, especially if your customers aren't likely to be confused. Second, what you say about your product can be way more legally dangerous than what you actually call it. The court really separated brand identity from product claims. And finally, this whole thing just goes to show you that the real story is often hidden in the details. And that kind of leaves us with one final big question to think about. What's actually more important for a brand? A totally unique name or a promise you can back up? This case seems to suggest that in the eyes of the law, and probably your customers too, the promise you make is a whole lot more important than the name you choose. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.